Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to Salam Media. I'm your host, Takir Dawood. We're halfway through the show. Yep, now we're going to be chatting all things cricket. I mean, we've waited for this all night. So many people have been glued to their screens and glued to their radios because some of our favorite personalities have been commentating on the games and bringing the games right to our homes. Looking at it, South Africa are on the brink, I would say, of qualifying, keeping it tight. England and Australia are now fighting it out to see who will continue to go through this tournament unbeaten. And unfortunately, tomorrow, one of those teams will be beaten when the two do meet. But before that, South Africa have an encounter that won't be very, very easy for them. It's going to be difficult. There's been a lot happening in the Protea camp. And I mean, this Protea team has been playing some phenomenal cricket. If you look at their past game against the Windies, I mean, so much to speak about. Talking about teams and talking about matches that have taken place. One that just finished right now, Pakistan and Afghanistan. What are some of your thoughts on that? Share it with us in the comment section below. And also, you can phone into the studio. The studio line's available. We're looking to chat to you, interact with us. Namibia, another African team, doing quite well. Who'd have thought that they'd be sitting higher than New Zealand and India in Group 2? But look, that's enough from my analysis. Let's hear from the expert. I'm joined by Hussien Manack, who's going to be telling us all about what's going down at the T20 World Cup in Abu Dhabi and Dubai. Assalamu alaikum. Thanks for joining me.
Assalamu alaikum. How are you doing, Takir? Nice to chat to you again.
All good, all good. Thanks so much for taking the time out of your day to chat to me. Looks like you're still in the edit suites there. Did you just come off air?
Yeah, we just had a full day. We've covered 2 matches. And, of course, this match was a real humdinger, which went right down to the 19th over. Pakistan needed 24 runs of 2 overs. And in the end, Asif Ali decided he just needed 1 over to finish the game. And that's what he did. In 4 balls in the 19th over, he hit 4 sixes, and that was the 24 runs. So some unbelievable fireworks there from him. But Pakistan certainly looked like the team to beat at the moment.
No, I mean, that we could certainly agree on. Would you have expected that game to come down to the wire and be that tight? I mean, Afghanistan have been showing stints of a great team in this tournament, but did you expect them to beat Pakistan or that game to be that close?
Yeah, you have to say Afghanistan, I've enjoyed the brand of cricket they played, the positivity. They look very, very professional in all areas. And they really look like they know what they're doing, So I've been quite impressed with the brand of cricket they played. I mean, you got a guy like Rashid Khan in the bowling lineup, and if you look at their batting as well, they are more than competent batting team. They've got a nice way of going. They play their cricket similar to the way West Indies played their cricket when they won those 2 World Cups. They come out and they look to hit boundaries, But in addition to the way West Indies play, I've noticed Afghanistan also work very hard. They run well between wickets in the middle overs, which West Indies at the moment are not doing. So West Indies are actually almost look like they've regressed. They've gone backwards from where they were a few years ago when they won their last World Cup. They've got a few players who are a little bit on the older side, long in the tooth. And Afghanistan looked like a really good side. So, I mean, they came up against a fantastic Pakistan team, and who was never going to be easy to beat. But I won't say surprised, but I was very impressed with the way Afghanistan played.
No, definitely. And I mean, just looking at this tournament thus far, do you think this could be the tournament where the minnows surprise us? I mean, Namibia, our neighbors, have been doing quite well in the tournament thus far. And now Afghanistan as well, doing well in the tournament. Do you think this is the tournament of the minnows?
Well, I mean, the fact that already we've seen Namibia do well, we've seen Afghanistan on the world stage do well, and a lot of these players are playing a lot of T20 cricket in these competitions around the world, like the Bangladesh Premier League, they're playing Canada, they're playing Caribbean Premier League, they're playing IPLs. I mean, Rashid Khan and these guys, Mohammad Nabi, who's the Afghanistan skipper, he's playing all around the world in all the various tournaments. So the guys are getting a lot of exposure now, and they're playing against the best, which means they're improving a lot faster. So, the minnows now, when you look at the makeup of the team, suddenly they've got 3, 4, 5 players who have played against the best. They're not afraid to mix it with the best, and they go and they take them on in a confident way. So, yeah, you may well see a few upsets. I mean, we saw Scotland do really well, and Afghanistan defeat Scotland. I mean, today we almost had an upset. So it's nice. I think it's good for cricket.
Now, I mean, it's nice to see how the game has grown and evolved to come to where it is now. But I mean, talking about evolution, how could we not talk about our beloved Proteas? This team we've always come so far, so close, but so far away in all of our international tournaments. And now we look at it this year and we see that we lost our opening game against Australia by 5 wickets, and they put up quite a competitive performance with the ball after not doing too well with the bat. Then we went on and we beat the West Indies. Two completely different performances, just like two different sides of a coin. Where does it go for us from here? Because after tomorrow's game between the two unbeaten teams, which are Australia and England, we now have an outside chance of making the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, okay, that's a big game tomorrow, the Australia-England game. But also remember, South Africa have already lost one game. So, if South Africa lose another one, then they're really going to be under pressure. I think tomorrow South Africa plays Sri Lanka. The first game against Australia was an Australian side who were out of form and hadn't played a lot of cricket in the last year or so because of the lockdowns and the border closures in Australia. So South Africa had a very good chance of beating them, but just didn't score enough. So 118 was not enough against Australia, even though Warner and some of the top order were not firing, but Australia have a very good attack. So in the second game against West Indies, I think South Africa did very well, although I do feel that West Indies kind of let themselves down because they batted poorly. They were probably 20 or 30 runs below par there, the way they batted. Lendl Simmons took his time and they just used up too many dot balls. But you got to give a lot of credit to South Africa, the way they played against West Indies. They also showed a lot of fight in the South Africa in the Australia game. Although they did only scored 118, they showed a lot of fight with the ball. So there are good signs. There's some good things happening. I'm just not sure South Africa have the personnel to be able to pull it off in this World Cup. In order for them to proceed and progress to the semifinals and then hopefully win a semifinal, get to the final, they need a few of their players to really stand up and play well out of their socks because they don't have a very well balanced unit. I mean, you look at their middle order, guys like Miller, those guys, they've just been so inconsistent. Yes, they're good players. Yes, they come off every now and then, but the inconsistency doesn't bode well. I mean, today we saw Asif Ali for Pakistan. He's a finisher. He comes in. Yeah. The guy hits 4 sixes to finish the game. Against New Zealand the other day, he did exactly the same thing. So players at that level, when they're given a role, they become reasonably consistent. That's the reason they play at that level. South African batters particularly have been very inconsistent. And so I think that's where the challenge lies. And they've got a young team. There's no Faf du Plessis. There's no Imran Tahir. You're missing all the experienced players, no AB de Villiers. For whatever reason, they're not there. So you're stuck with a young team. The few experienced players you have are not as consistent as they need to be in order to give the team a level of confidence that, we can go out there and we can beat this team or we can beat that team comfortably, like the way Pakistan are thrashing teams at the moment. So you don't get that sense of confidence. You feel that Quinton needs to score. You feel that Rassie needs to score. If they don't score, the team's in trouble because there's too many players who are inconsistent. So I think that's the challenge you're sitting with. So a few positive things. Shams is number one bowler in the world. You know what you're going to get from him. Dangerous bowler. Batters playing against South Africa know they need to see him off. Chances are he'll pick up a few wickets for next to nothing. Very similar to Rashid Khan. You look at a guy like Aiden Markram. Yes, not real experience in World Cup formats or T20 World Cups. But if you look at the body language, the positive way he's going about his business, he looks like a serious player and he looks in form at the moment. Quinton de Kock, with all the stuff happening off the field at the moment, you're not sure what you're going to get from him at the moment. He doesn't have a great record in World Cups. When the pressure's on in these type of knockout tournaments, he hasn't quite performed in the past. But you never know. Maybe the off-the-field stuff that happened may spur him off the backing he's got from his team, even though he decided not to take the knee and all that stuff. The team have backed him. The captain's backed him. So maybe that may bring the best out of him. I don't know. Rassie van der Dussen, very good player. He has played a lot of years domestic first-class cricket, and now has come up, played in a few leagues around the world. But a quality player, you know what you're going to get from him. Reasonably consistent. He's one of the consistent players. Guys like Klaasen, those guys are a bit inconsistent. Reza Hendricks, I'm not sure whether he's going to play or not, depending on whether Quinton's going to come back.
So where does that leave us now? I actually wanted to ask you, where does that leave us? I mean, Quinton has made himself available for the next game. We know that, yes, he is one of the key players in South Africa's structure, in their setup, having been there for many years. But now your team hasn't won the first game in which he featured. The next game they went out and won. Do you change a winning team at such a crucial stage in the tournament?
Okay, if Quinton's available and he's not, let's just say he's not suspended or whatever for his actions now, and he's apologized for it. So CSA will have probably a disciplinary meeting or whatever the case may be. Committee will get together and decide whether he's eligible to play or not. And if he plays, if he's available to play, he has to play. The question is, where do you fit him? Do you bring him in place of Reza Hendricks, or do you get him in there and move Reza down and drop Klaasen? That would be what probably I would look. Klaasen looks a little bit out of form at the moment. He's not middling the ball. He looks all over the place, but too inconsistent, like I said. So you've got Klaasen inconsistent. You've got Miller too inconsistent. So you just got that middle order. It just looks very brittle. Compare that to the Pakistan middle order, like we've seen today. Look, Pakistan top order is strong. The middle order is strong. There's experience there. There's guys who can come in and do the business. South Africa, you just don't know what you're going to get, because it's almost like, they're going to fire 1 out of 10. A Klaasen 1 out of 5, 1 out of 10, you're going to get something from him. Miller 1 out of 10, you're going to get something. If you get it on the day, maybe tomorrow, you're lucky. Then maybe for the next few games, you're going to get nothing. And that's just been the trend. No disrespect to him. He's a wonderful player. But I think South Africa have just given over the years too many opportunities to just a few players instead of, and there's a lot of very, very good players in our system. Fantastic players. Dangerous players. You just got to look at the scores and look at some of the players playing domestic cricket. So I would certainly probably look to play Reza. I think he's a wonderful player, wonderful T20 player. He's a dangerous player. So I would go with, and remember Reza and Rassie, Markram. For me, that's the future. You've got Pavuma there, who's the skipper, so he has to play. But like I say, South Africa need those few players who I've mentioned now. They need to fire, because if they don't fire, then the others are just a little too inconsistent. But on the day,
there's no time. It's just on the day it has to work.
If it clicks on the day, they do well, and they can beat anybody, because they've got the talent. It's not like the talent's not there. Just they need to put it together, and they need to put it together more consistently.
No, I mean, we're hoping so. I mean, we've got Sri Lanka taking on tomorrow morning, and just looking at both teams' last 5 fixtures, or last 5 results for that matter, Sri Lanka have only lost 1 out of their last 5, and to many surprise, South Africa as well, but their last loss only coming against Australia. And funny enough, their 3 wins before that come against Sri Lanka. So these 2 teams know each other very, very well. But I mean, in World Cup situation, do you think South Africa have analyzed the opponent through and through, beaten them earlier this year, and now taking that momentum into the World Cup and possibly having a bit of deja vu and knocking them out of the park? Do you think it's possible?
The qualifying week before the tournament, they had to qualify, which means they played 3 matches of high intensity. They won all 3, and then they came through and qualified. So they've had 3 really good games in proper match situation, which will only do them well. And a few of the cricketers have stood up. They've got a good attack. Sri Lanka. Yes, I think in Sri Lanka, when South Africa went there, South Africa did beat them. So South Africa should beat them. They should have the better of them, you would think. Particularly, as you say, because they beat them in the series just before the World Cup. But, in the World Cup, it becomes kind of, the pressure's a little different. It somehow has a different feel to it. And the crowd's different. And can South Africa do the business during a tournament like this? I think they can. I think they can pull it off against Sri Lanka tomorrow. And if they do, having lost just 1 game and then winning 2, they may have a good chance of qualifying. They'll need to keep winning, though.
Yep, and keep that net run rate on their side. Well, that's
Yeah.
the first game of the day tomorrow. First ball should be expected to be bowled at about 11:30 tomorrow morning. Then we go on to the next game, the battle of the two undefeated teams thus far. England taking on Australia. Looking at both of these teams, we're saying it's a tough one. I mean, England have just been firing at all cylinders, and Australia got lucky, but they're still in the tournament, knocking things out week in and week out. So yeah, you've got luck up against talent. What do you make of this game?
Look, you've got an England team which is a very, very good team. I mean, they're a dangerous side. You look at some of the players in that side, from Morgan to Roy to, I mean, they just a dangerous side. They play a wonderful brand of cricket as well. So you're going to have to play really well to beat England on
Hmm.
the day. In Australia, they have the bowling attack. You got Stark, Hazelwood. Um, who else have you got there? Who am I, I'm missing there? I mean, Hazelwood's bowling really well. Stark, they've got Zampa, they've got Cummins.
Yeah.
And of course you got Stoinis and those guys, But so they when they get it right, Australia, in World Cups they compete. They know how to play in big matches. They know how to step it up when they need to. So I think it's going to be a
Hmm.
fascinating game tomorrow. I'm looking forward to it. And yeah, whoever wins looks like probably will qualify because then they've won 3 out of 3. And whoever loses will have to keep fighting. So then whoever loses is in a similar position to South Africa
Hmm.
because you've then lost one, two, and then you're going to make up your mind how you go forward from there. But it's a very difficult group because this is a tough group. It's almost like they're calling it the group of death, and because
Yeah.
you've got all these good teams, you've got West Indies who now won again today. So West Indies looks like they're out, but the fact that they won today, you don't know what that could do to their confidence, and the momentum could just suddenly pick them up. And they're also a dangerous side because if they start connecting and start hitting sixes and hit
Hmm.
and we know how they play, that's their brand of cricket. I mean, nobody can bowl to these guys because they can hit you out of the park. Good ball,
Yeah.
bad ball, whatever. They're gonna, you're gonna disappear. They just need to get the intensity, the energy,
Hmm.
and they just need to be motivated. I feel they're a little bit flat at the moment, the West Indies, and so they're playing well in bursts and in patches. But
Hmm.
Australia and England are very professional sides. They don't leave a lot to chance.
Yeah.
So whoever's going to come out on top, I think is going to have a very good chance of going through.
No, definitely. I'm certainly looking forward to it. I mean, just going back to West Indies, pretty much like remind you quite a bit of the Proteas. They played such amazing cricket all year, but now come World Cup time, you've got the likes of your Chris Gale that's not firing at all cylinders. I mean, you've got Kieran Pollard. They're not getting there, and they're just not making contact because we know them for being big hitters. And you find more of the other players now stepping up and then putting together a good knock of runs to be competitive, and the bowlers just coming in and working hard in this tournament. What do you make of the surfaces though? Because the scores have been between averaging before between 120 and 140. It's quite low scoring if you look at it for a T20 game.
It is indeed. I think what's happened also, the pitches are not as flat as we tend to think they are because we think it's UAE, they're going to be flat like subcontinent pitches and lots of
Hmm.
runs. There's been something in there, like in Sharjah today. Sharjah, generally the pitches they've relayed that pitch at the beginning of the year. So if you look at the IPL in 2020, they were high scoring games. The IPL this year was a little different. In Sharjah, we've had lower scores,
Hmm.
where your average score runs per over was something like about 7 compared to about 8.5, almost 9 last year.
Hmm.
So things are a little different. And Dubai and those other venues, the ball does go around a bit in the evenings. We've seen a bit of bounce, we've seen a bit of seam movement. We've seen the fast bowlers actually being quite effective. So
Hmm.
they're not as flat as people tend to think they are. The other factor also is to remember is that teams like Pakistan, teams like Afghanistan, there's certain teams who've played a lot there in those venues. So Pakistan used that. That was their home ground for quite a few
Hmm.
years where there was no international cricket in Pakistan. So Pakistan are very familiar with the conditions there. It's almost like home to them. Then you've had the IPL there for 2 years now. So the players like Indian players, a lot of them, and a lot of international players who've played IPL cricket in the last 2 years will be very familiar with the like Nicholas Pooran today had a fantastic knock, 40 of 21. He batted brilliantly. He's one of the young West Indian players who I think we're going to see a lot of. He's a really smart cricketer. Plays a good brand of cricket and can score around the wicket. Also a wicket keeper. And I think today he was captaining when Pollard went off. But he's played a lot in those conditions, So the guys who played there have a bit of an edge. And not many South Africans in this side have played there, apart from the guys who played IPL. And the guys who played international cricket and played against Pakistan there. So that's probably a little bit of a disadvantage to some of our guys who haven't played in those conditions before, whereas a lot of the other teams have got a lot of players who've played there.
Would have worked in our favor.
Yeah,
could have worked in our favor. But look, Hussien, unfortunately, that's all we have time for this evening. I know you want to get home, and it's been a long day of work for you. Quite amazing cricket. We wish the Proteas the best of luck tomorrow, and I mean the best of luck to you as well for the rest of the tournament. We look forward to you keeping the rest of the country updated, man. It's amazing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Shukran, Jazakallah, and thanks for having me. Salam.
Walaikum salam. That was Hussien Manack, commentator and analyst, giving us his thoughts on what's currently going down in the T20 World Cup. Well, we're going to take a quick break. That made me tired. I'm actually nervous. The Springboks, you see, even getting the national teams confused. The Proteas are playing tomorrow. The first ball will be bowled at 11:30 tomorrow morning when the Proteas do take on Sri Lanka. It's going to be an interesting match. We hope that the Proteas can perform tomorrow and possibly stick up their hand or their bat to make sure that they qualify for the semi-finals. Next up, we're chatting a bit of rugby. We're chatting lifestyle. We're chatting haircuts. I mean, I'm sure throughout the evening, if you've been following the show, I've given enough away. But stay tuned to Salam Media, because next up, we're going to be chatting to Amir Yusuf. He's going to be telling us a bit more about what he does and how his dreams became reality.